You know, one of the most powerful forces in our world. It's really just a story we all agree on. Today, we're going to break down that story, the story of money.
Think about it. It's not really about the paper in your wallet or the numbers on your screen. At its heart, money is a shared belief. It's a promise we all make to each other. And you know what? The whole system only holds up because we all trust that it will.
Okay, so for this whole social contract thing to actually work, money has to do three really important jobs, three core functions. I mean, can you imagine trying to trade like a flock of chickens for a new car? It's absurd, right? That's the barter system. Money as a medium of exchange just completely solves that. But it also has to be a store of value, right? The money you earn today needs to be worth something tomorrow or 30 years from now when you want to retire. And finally, it's a unit of account. Basically, a universal yardstick so we know what a coffee is worth compared to a Tesla. These three things, they're the absolute bedrock of our entire economy.
So right now, this social contract, this story of money, is actually playing out in two very different ways. You've got the traditional system we all grew up with, and then you've got this new kid on the block, a challenger, that's basically trying to rewrite the entire rulebook.
On one side, you have the fiat system. That's your dollars, your euros, the money we're all used to, managed by big central institutions. And on the other side, you've got the crypto system. It's totally digital, and it's run by code and its community. We're talking about two completely different ideas about how money should work. Okay, but have you ever stopped to think about where all this money actually comes from? Because how it's created, well, that's where you see the huge difference between these two worlds.
So in the fiat system, it's kind of a two-step dance. First, the central bank creates what's called base money. But that's not where most money comes from. The real, I guess you could call it magic, happens with regular banks through something called the money multiplier. It works like this. You deposit $100. The bank holds on to, say, $10 and lends out the other $90. That $90 gets deposited in another bank, which then lends out a piece of that. And on it goes. New money basically created out of thin air through lending.
Crypto, totally different ballgame. With proof-of-work systems, think Bitcoin, you have powerful computers all over the world racing to solve these super complex math problems. The winner gets to add the next block of transactions to the chain and gets rewarded with brand new coins. Then there's proof of stake, a newer method. Here, you lock up or stake your own crypto to help validate transactions. It's like putting down a security deposit to prove you'll act honestly. If you do, you get rewarded. It's all about participation, not some central power calling the shot.
And this is where we get to a really fascinating idea, digital scarcity. See, with some cryptos, Bitcoin is the most famous example, there's a hard limit on how many can ever exist. For Bitcoin, that magic number is 21 million. That's it. It's written into the code. The idea is to make it a bit like digital gold, something with a fixed, predictable supply.
Okay, so if money is a contract, then who gets to be the lawyer? Who writes the rules? And who can change them? This is all about governance, and it's a huge deal.
And this really breaks it down perfectly. With fiat money, you've got central banks in the driver's seat. They use tools like interest rates to try and steer the economy. It's all very adaptive. But in the crypto world, the rules are just baked right into the code. Things like the Bitcoin halving, where the reward for mining gets cut in half every few years, it's all predetermined. It just happens automatically.
So what's the trade-off here? Well, the fiat system gives you flexibility. You have humans at the wheel who can react to a crisis. The crypto system, on the other hand, gives you predictability. The rules are the rules. No one can just change them on a whim. So which one is better? Honestly, that's the billion-dollar question everyone is debating right now.
All right, every financial system needs a rule book, a ledger, right? Something to keep track of who has what. But the way these ledgers are kept, well, they couldn't be more different. And this gets right to the heart of the whole transparency debate.
It really makes you ask, can we follow the money? How much should we be able to see? It's this constant battle between transparency and privacy, and it's playing out in our financial lives every day.
The traditional banking system, it runs on private ledgers. You can't just peek behind the curtain. It's an opaque system. Crypto, though, flips that completely on its head. It uses a public blockchain. Anyone, and I mean anyone, can go look at the ledger in real time. It's a radical move toward transparency, and it has massive implications for things like auditing and just holding the system accountable.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. These two systems, they aren't living in separate universes anymore. The lines are starting to get really blurry. They're influencing each other, and together, they're shaping what the future of money is going to look like.
You can see this happening in a few key areas. You have central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. That's basically the old guard trying to create their own digital dollar, trying to get that digital efficiency but keep the central control. Then there's DeFi, decentralized finance. That's the crypto world's attempt to rebuild all of banking, lending, borrowing, you name it, but on the blockchain without the banks. And finally, you've got stablecoins. Think of them as the bridge between these two worlds, trying to offer the stability of fiat money in the wild world of crypto.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? It's that the very definition of money is up for grabs. The fundamental rules of finance we've lived by for decades are being challenged and rewritten, right now, as we speak.
And that leaves us with one final, massive question. As this social contract for money evolves, where are we going to place our trust? Are we going to stick with human institutions with all their flexibility and all their flaws? Or are we going to put our faith in transparent, predictable code? The choice we make, well, it's not just going to define the future of money, it might just define the future of society itself.